in Europe, it's a little bit different in that the market is so much more nascent and there's so much less overall volume going on. I mean, if you look at the numbers of venture capital funding that happens, I know the numbers for Germany, all of the venture funding for biotech companies in Germany combined is less than all the companies that LabCentral raised, like in one building of ours in Kendall. It's crazy. You're talking $2-3 billion a year. And in Germany, you raise a few $100 million in aggregate, right? So that's sad. And we want to help that.
Hey, Philip here. Welcome to the 5th episode of the FLOT.BIO show, where I interview the best Europeans in biotech to help you be inspired and grow. And today I'm in Paris to talk with Johannes Fruehauf, the CEO of BioLabs. And I'm not just anywhere in Paris, I'm literally in front of Notre Dame, and I'm going there where you have the BioLabs Hotel New, which is in the former hospital. And I'm amazed that there is 10,000 square meters of labs and offices here on the island in the hypercenter of Paris. Quick words about Johannes. I've known him for almost a decade. I actually almost worked for him when I was living in Boston. And Johannes is a German MD who then went on to found a biotech company after his postdoc at Harvard. Then he co-founded BioLabs and the sister nonprofit LabCentral. And he's also a general partner in a seed fund. And today, BioLabs is the biggest networking or co-working labs / incubators in the world. Has over 14 locations in 10 different geographies, including 3 in Europe. So actually this one, another one in Paris, and one in Heidelberg. And today we will talk about reinventing co-working laboratories for biotech startups, about money and profitability, and much more. So let's head inside and talk to Johannes. All right, so Johannes, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Philip. Nice to see you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great to be here. I mean, from the intro, people can see the where we are. I mean, it's amazing to be in front of Notre Dame.
Isn't it a great location?
It's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
I think let's actually talk about. I mean, start with this, not just Notre Dame, but talk about maybe from the zooming out a bit on how and why you managed to basically reinvent co-working labs, co-working space / incubators for biotechs.
Yeah.
Let's start here.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So this goes back to really the financial crisis, 08, 09, and the aftermath of this. I had co-founded a company previously that we sold in 2010, and that was done still in like the traditional format, right? Like you raise a bunch of money and then you try to find a place where to do your science work. This all happens in Boston at the time.
Yeah.
And so, we were scientists. We had a good piece of technology. There were some investors who put a bunch of money towards it, but it took us about a year, 9 months, 10 months before we could actually do the first experiments, because I had to go out, find lab space, get an architect to build a lab and get the permits to do the construction and then find the workers, etc. Right? Like all things that are tedious. We are not experts, right? I make mistakes. I'm a scientist. I'm not a real estate person. And so we learned the hard way that it's not a great use of time for scientists to be doing real estate.
Yeah.
And then, but that company we saw, it's a company called Sequent Pharmaceuticals. We sold it in 2010, and I was looking what to do next. I had a startup with a French friend of mine, Philippe Langella. He's at INRA here in outside of Paris. We had a cool concept, microbiome. You remember that?
Yes, yeah.
By Thera, doing engineered microbes for gut health and for inflammatory bowel disease and things like that. But it was very hard for us to raise money at the time. So what do? You have an idea. We had people, we had a small lab, and we had costs, but we had very little ways of raising money. We got a little bit of money from Johnson & Johnson at the time. But this is now, we're talking 2010 timeframe. It was still very hard for people to raise money. I think it was comparable to the times we're facing now.
Yeah.
In the US, at least, startups are having a very hard time raising money. So we looked to supplement our income somehow, and we did CRO type services for VCs and for other people on the side while we were advancing our own agenda. And in the process, we worked with many founders and startups out of the venture funds that ended up needing space. And so eventually we allowed them to use our existing lab.
So you realized basically that the problem you had in your first startup, other entrepreneurs found, or VCs had the similar problem.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a conscious problem because that's the way you did things, right? It's only sort of really in reflection that you say, oh, this was a really bad way of doing it. And now, so while we were doing this work as sort of a CRO, and we were working a lot with the local VC firms, with all the big firms in Boston, they sent us things that they wanted a little bit of biology work done. A PCR, a qPCR assay, an ELISA, some other like biomarker work. And mostly this was to validate academic concepts before they were going to make an investment.
Produce a few data if it's reproduced.
Absolutely, before you put the big money, right? There's this crisis of science where a lot of stuff gets published that's not real, right? Or that's not reproducible. Maybe it's not outright fraud, but it's so complicated that it can't really be reproduced outside of the specific conditions. So that's what we were tasked with. And many projects that we tested and gave a green light for became companies. They got funding and they became companies, and then they needed some space. And in the initial stages, they only needed like a bench or two. And we had that in our lab. So we taught the newly hired scientists for this project how to do things, and they grew in our lab. And before you know it, you have 5 or 6 such other projects in your lab. They were our friends and clients at the same time. And then I started getting inbound calls from people who said, oh, I hear you're renting lab space. I didn't know I was renting lab space. I knew I was doing like a service shop for the VCs and our colleagues. But then over time, it became clear that that was actually a pretty good business and that there was a strong demand. Certainly, we started in Kendall Square, which is sort of the hotbed of biotech founder activity.
2010 was already pretty sizable.
Enzymes. Correct.
Farmers around, the MIT was already there.
And
context and stuff.
Yeah. And we caught a period where it was hard to raise money, or it was not impossible, but difficult to raise money. So companies and founders needed to be very capital efficient, right? So after a crisis, I think in a crisis moment, that's when new things gets invented, new models get established, right? Like people would have continued to do it the old and inefficient way, I think. But here there was a crisis and a challenge, and we happened to have a solution for it. We didn't like magically or
you didn't do market study.
No, it's just like the market came to us and showed us this thing, and we were able to grasp it and grow it quickly, right? And so we were then adding more space than we needed ourselves to just build it out for our friends and then clients. And so the idea also, what set us apart from other people is that we had, of course, the labs built for our own needs. So it was very close to the needs of our colleagues as well. So fully equipped labs. We had the permits. We did the purchasing of our own chemicals, and they could use our suppliers and everything. So it was very convenient for them because they could come in and do science on day one. That's what we scaled. That program is what we scaled. And through like every 3 or 4 months, we added more space. And eventually we saw that this is the real thing. And we had some very successful companies come through that raised hundreds of millions of dollars. And so I was able to then take that to the state of Massachusetts, and they gave us this grant that created LabCentral. That's why we have these two entities, BioLabs as well as LabCentral.
That's right. And then I didn't even know really the super early days, actually, because I was living in Boston. We met when LabCentral opened, and we did an interview there. And I mean, that's really amazing space. And I mean, I had never seen something like this. And I think what sets also quite apart is, I mean, yes, there's a very functional aspect of capital efficiency, but also there's just the energy and the community that is really vibrant.
Powerful.
There's something.
Yeah, so we now understand that the community, the placemaking, and the connections that we are able to help create are as important as the space, or as the lab functionality. So I use this sentence when I tell my people what they should do is we do two things. We reduce friction and we increase collisions. So you reduce friction by building nice spaces. I mean, building functional labs, right? Like hopefully we have all the lab tools and toys that you need to do your science. And hopefully we build labs that are safe, and we build labs that have the right corridor width and the right height of the tables and things, right? And all the equipment that you require. That's reducing friction. And then we increase collisions. That's not hopefully people carrying chemicals, but that's people meeting in our cafes and meeting at our events and making more opportunity for this serendipitous connection between an investor and a founder raising money, or between a scientist looking for work and a startup hiring a new team, right? And all of these, we are unable to predict what and who's going to meet, but we create the opportunity for it. And we are actually fairly deliberate about it. We have developed very stringent design rules about how we build our spaces. Use a lot of glass, use a lot of common and open space. Sometimes it's even intimidating for people who are not used to this, because there's not a lot of privacy in our spaces, right? Like every conference room, every office you can look into. And that's by design. Many of our colleagues are more introverted types. That's why we go into science, not politics or sales. And so we can help them with some of the way that we design the spaces. After an initial period of shock and hesitation, most people love it. And what you see if you go to any one of our labs, even here, which is one of the youngest places now, there's a strong buzz in the cafe. There's people connecting, and they talk about science, they talk about finance, but they also talk about private things like where they go on the weekend. And that's a wonderful...
You make connections.
It's a wonderful way to make...
No, I think just in the space, I was talking to him about meeting him like in the last year, and he's just there. Like,
it's silly, right? It's a really cool thing, this community of people, because we are pulling together the like-minded people, so the scientists and engineers who have an interest in entrepreneurship, right? Now, in Paris, with this facility, we're creating a place for that community. Of course, this is still small and interim, but it's got this big vision of what will be the largest biotech incubator in Europe, right? In a few years, when we build out the western wing of this.
Yeah, it's 2028. Well, opening.
Too think. I'm saying in a few years.
In a few years.
Now the years is so far out that I don't even know how to think in 4 years. But like in a few years.
In a few years. That's crazy. And so I get what was missing. What I also curious as in today, I mean, the community space, I get it. But then I'm curious also from in Boston, I mean, it's a bit different formats compared to Europe as well, but from how do you what are your competitors today or what stuff? But I mean, I think a lot of startups, at least for them, would still have a lab space at the academic lab and continue to do some experiment until they're like big enough to rent a space at one of the hospitals here in Paris or at whatever, some more like science parks or something. So yeah, just curious of, is it the same? Yeah, where do you place yourself there, or like how does it compare?
Well, I think we have to take each market by itself, right? In Boston, we were the first place to build this type of co-working for labs. There had been incubators before, typically done by universities or by real estate people, and many didn't really meet the needs of this community. That's why we grew fastest, and that's why our brand is still sort of a very well-regarded brand in the space, because we are scientists and we are entrepreneurs and we build spaces for ourselves, and that's what people want. So if you compare that with the previously existing incubators, they typically did not produce very strong companies. They produced mediocre or weak companies. And so that's like completely different in our case. I believe that has to do with who we are as a group, as a founding team, and our own experience that sort of lived in the space and built on this. Now, that gave us an opportunity to be the first such group in Boston and in many other cities in the United States, where we quickly expanded. We are now in like 8 states and 14 cities, I think, and we're building more. But there are now people who see this concept and who do this themselves, right? It's a little bit like, of course, my team sometimes is very upset when there's a new competitor coming up to the market. And I tell them, look, it's sort of like you invent the idea of a hotel, right? Okay, we did invent the idea of the hotel for scientists, but you cannot patent that. You shouldn't be upset if other people see that this is a good model of
confirmation.
Absolutely, right? And so it's a challenge for us. We have to provide better community, better service, better value for the entrepreneurs, and then they'll continue to work with us. There are a number of groups. I'm not going to highlight them. Some are better than others. None are better than us. But there's also a lot of hype going on in lab real estate now, and just because it's an asset class in commercial real estate, and so that means there's huge money behind it, and some people are trying to sort of use our model or say that they have something similar to BioLabs, but it's hard. Like if you're a real estate person, it's very hard to really learn the needs of the scientists, right? Or live the life of a scientist. So we're not so worried about that. In Europe, it's a little bit, so this is all in the United States. In Europe, it's a little bit different in that the market is so much more nascent and there's so much less overall volume going on. I mean, if you look at the numbers of venture capital funding, that happens, I know the numbers for Germany. All of the venture funding for biotech companies in Germany combined is less than, like if you look at any year since 2016, is less than all the companies that LabCentral raised, like in one building of ours in Kendall. It's crazy. You're talking $2-3 billion a year. And in Germany, you raise a few $100 million in aggregate, right? So that's sad, and we want to help that. And I don't know the numbers in France, but
it's similar.
It's probably similar order of magnitude. I actually think that, I mean, we come off of a great event yesterday night where we opened this first phase of our hotelier incubator here, BioLabs. I think there's a lot of good energy in France, and I give the national government a lot of credit for changing the spirit and the mood. And we work very well with the different levels of government. I'm still learning about them. It's city, prefecture, or region, and then national government. But they're all very interested in this theme of innovation and enabling entrepreneurship and enabling a young generation of people. So that's good, and that's very hopeful, I think. And France is on a good trajectory, and they're performing much better than their reputation. Certainly in the US, France has a reputation as being socialist and terrible to employ people, strikes, right? But they're really having really good policies, relatively rapid decision making, and we're quite happy with the way that it goes here. So We are, I think, the first program of this kind in Paris now. And as you know, we have 3 locations around Paris. We have this site at Hotel Dieu, which is just currently office, and some conference rooms and meeting spaces. I don't know if you will do a tour with your guests with your video.
Yeah, I took some shots.
Okay. And then we have a lab space, which is in different hospital of the APHP group in the 14th district at Hôpital Broussais. That's small, but we hope to grow it quickly. It's about 2/3 full right now. Eventually, we will be building a 10,000 square meters incubator in the western wing of Hotel Dieu. And that will be very big and massive, but we need to
That's a few years.
a few years out. And we have a BioLabs at Saclay with the French pharmaceutical company Synergies. It's on the Plateau de Saclay, and that's brand new.
It's this Paris-Saclay, this huge campus build, around the university where they group all the universities, a lot of big corporate research centers, and make this like massive
greenfield development in a way. It used to be agricultural area. And it will be a very big hub. There are many really brand name universities there and pharmaceutical companies. And once they have the public transport going, it will be good. Right now, there's only a shuttle, right, in a few years. The tramway was promised to be completed in 2022 and then 2024, and I think now it's still a few years.
But the metro is already being built.
I've seen it too. It will be good. And so if some of your listeners are in the Ile-de-France region, they should check out our BioLabs at Saclay. And it's a beautiful building. It is accepting new applications from startups, and you have the opportunity to be very closely interfacing with the scientists of Synergies if you're interested. So if they want to have a research collaboration, if they maybe want to explore a program of joint venture or funding with Synergies, that's a good opportunity for them.
We touched base on quite a lot of things. It's interesting. Maybe in some of the questions I had were kind of already answered, or we can take it further. One thing I had, but you touched on it on the let's say on the specificity / the difficulty to open in Europe, which was different. And I remember we talked for many years, and you were working on opening something in Europe, and you even told me, okay, it's how did you tell something like, I have a lot of respect for people doing business in Europe. Can you expand a bit there? I mean, I like that you have this view of like being German, doing business on both sides of the Atlantic with basically a similar product in a similar environment. So what basically why was it more difficult?
So I mean, as background, right? I'm a medical doctor. I'm not a trained business person. I'm a learned business person through as I say, the school of hard knocks. And I developed all of what I know about biotech and venture capital by practicing it in the United States. So even though I'm German and I studied in France for a while, I'm not as familiar with the system here. And so then for me, it was quite a shock to arrive in Europe again and to try and do what I learned to do over there with a model that works, and then to be facing obstacles that are not business obstacles, but bureaucratic obstacles. And what I perceive to be unnecessary friction, right? The exact same thing that we're trying to reduce for our entrepreneurs is what I experience here. Bureaucracy, permits, delays, wait times, and mediocre administration proceedings that help nobody. I understand that you need to have some regulation. We're building labs after all. I understand you need to have safety rules, etc. I respect all of that. But if you have people enabled to put roadblocks in the path of an entrepreneur who wants to build something that add no value for anybody, it doesn't add safety, it doesn't even really add revenue for the government. I'm not even complaining about the taxes. I'm complaining about the process, right? That is really bad, and Europe needs to get a handle on that. This is specifically true in my home country and yours, Germany. Here in France, it's also there are also administrative obstacles, and we talked about some of them at the event yesterday. Even politicians are there to help us overcome them now. What's interesting is that often you do have buy-in from like the strategic decision makers, but then it gets ground to a halt in the bellies of the administration layer that is in between. And so that's something. I'm a European. I want this place to thrive. I want our societies to develop better and to have economic dynamism. And I think we need to get a handle on this as Europeans, as Germans, as French. Not everything is great in America, right? We know that. But certainly for entrepreneurship, America has a good formula, which is to a priori not think it's a bad thing if people want to try something new, right? And so to let them go do it first, right? Until they screw up in a way, right? It's just faster. People get employed fast. Of course, they can get let go. But that eventually creates this economic dynamism that is very helpful. I do have big hopes. I think I'm optimistic with the things I see in France now. And I'm optimistic when I speak with these young entrepreneurs that you met in the cafe now, right? They all are very well trained. They have a strong basis. The people that I interface with are all scientists or engineers, right? So there's very good science going on, very good training. And now for the last 5 or 10 years, they want to also do something with it. They want to become entrepreneurs and build their own ideas out. And that is, I think, a new development from several years ago where they all wanted to work for the Peugeot or for the government or for the big companies, right? So it's now cool in France to want to pursue a startup idea, right? That's a really hopeful sign.
You put it really well. I think it's one thing that at least French government has played a big role, but I think also more the whole startup success stories. And I give credit to government, but there's probably also a big
there's a societal shift.
And
100%. I think who did the government create it? Probably not. Probably the societal shift was there, and the government was able to somehow catalyze it or accelerate it. And another, I wish that in Germany we had sort of a dedicated effort to help startups more, right? It doesn't seem to be as deliberate. There are individual initiatives for sure. I'm still missing in Germany the initiatives that are focusing on biotechnology startups. And the fact that Germany had the success of BioNTech should rather motivate them to do more than to say, oh, look, we have BioNTech, isn't that great, right? Like BioNTech, Germany had BioNTech because of sheer luck, I want to say, right? The science on the basis in the universities, in the research hospitals is phenomenally good, right? And we are in Germany punching way below our weight in terms of translating that into products and companies and jobs and economic wealth, right?
I mean, I would say even that, I mean, basically, if you take Germany, it's pretty much the same across Europe. And UK usually has some trends a bit different. They're pretty good in translation. They're a bit more business friendly, what I hear, and for opening things. But I think, I mean, it's a very complex problem, but it's great that you guys managed to open the space in Heidelberg and 2 space here, or 2.5 spaces, and that you're actually helping really bring that dynamism and helping entrepreneurs. I mean, at least having tools and having more facility to start. I mean, I think, it's already, I mean...
When are you airing this? When are you going to air this?
Next week.
So, okay, then we cannot yet make the new announcement. We have a new announcement. Stay tuned for Germany. But next week we can't.
Okay, okay, now that's great. And just so And also I was touched. I mean, I think you mentioned the people as in a special component of BioLabs is really the team and the people at BioLabs, and I think that's a big factor. And maybe we can talk a bit about people in general, people inside companies, people inside startups, and actually also at BioLabs, you have, even in the US team, you have a lot of Europeans in the team as well. I don't know if that's a success factor or not, but that's at least a fact. But I think one thing that makes BioLabs also really special is coming from, I mean, not just you, but even on the top team is, you can really feel this like authenticity, and you came from the problem, and there's this relevance, and you're running it, and can you touch a bit on this on BioLabs, but on
in general,
in people a bit more in general?
Yeah. So I think people are the beginning and the end of a startup, right? And you can, even if you have a genial piece of science and technology and you don't have a good team to develop it, it will go nowhere, right? But if you have a strong team, even if they have a bad piece of technology, they will make a success of it because they will recognize it and they will improve it or pivot or bring in another solution, right? So I am a strong believer of primacy of team over technology.
So people.
And that's the same is true. So we can talk a little bit about BioLabs, but the same is true on our venture side. As you know, I'm also a founder and a partner in a venture capital fund called Mission BioCapital. And there the same thing is true. Because we are early stage investors, we value the team and the coherence of the team and the professionalism of the team and the character of the team more than we do the technology that they have. Of course, that needs to be interesting, etc. But if there's any doubt about the reliability of the team or the capability or the dedication, it's not going to be funded by funding. So let's talk about BioLabs and LabCentral.
Just for that, if you have to rate it, if you need to put a percentage on the team versus technology, you put like 75-25, something like this.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So really significantly
significant
more.
because as VCs, so we are VCs that invest, and sometimes we want to be very active investors, but we don't there are other firms like Third Rock and Flagship that basically build all their companies in-house. Right? We don't do that. We want to bet on the team. We think the team are the best expert in their field, and they also have the 110% commitment to their idea, right? So who's better to develop it than them?
Yeah.
And so that's our thesis. Yeah. But that means we need to be convinced by the team first and foremost, and then of course we need to believe in the solution, etc. This market.
I guess you apply that also to BioLabs, as in when you select for tenants.
Yeah. So in BioLabs, it's like a hospitality business in a way, right? It's a little bit, we need people who can work with a customer, right? A lot of what we do is problem solving for the entrepreneurs. And so I'm very proud of the teams I have been able to build and retain at LabCentral and at BioLabs as well, because it requires a certain skill set, and sometimes it's a little bit quirky people, right? It's not sort of the straight line people. It's sometimes people who have done some retail and they've tried to be an entrepreneur and failed in that, but they learned a lot of things, right? And so now they can connect much better with the other entrepreneurs that we have because they've got that background, or they've been in entertainment, or maybe they've been a bench scientist before. So we try to build very diverse teams. And as you said, I tend to see value in having a diverse experience. Having worked in different countries is certainly a plus. Having immersed yourself in different cultures is certainly a plus if you apply with me for a job, right? Because I've done that, and I think it's hugely valuable to have lived in a bunch of different countries and worked in different cultures, because it gives you a little bit of humility. It gives you a little bit of perspective. What you grew up with is not what everybody grows up with, and it's not the right thing or the wrong thing. It's just different, right? And so after living in in multiple countries, you get to see that, okay, there are certain things that are constant between people and that are not directly culturally dependent. And then there are other assumptions where you think, oh, but that's not what I used to. That's not what I grew up with. Well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean it's good or it's bad, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to encourage that in our people. Why? Because our user base is also very diverse. So if you look at the companies that we work with in Boston, they are 72% founded by immigrants to America, or co-founded, right? Like the founding team or co-founding team in 72.9%. When we did a study on this, there was this big, during the dark years in the last Trump years, there was a lot of pushback against immigration in America. And so we did this study to demonstrate how immigration actually contributes to the economy. And so we had 73% of companies had an immigrant founder or co-founder. And so it's important for my team to be able to work with that group of people, right? So if I hire Americans, I want Americans with a passport who have at least traveled abroad once or twice, right? And abroad is not Florida. If you come from Boston. So that's an important mindset.
So interesting that you apply it in both directions. And I'm laughing a bit about this. Like, I mean, it makes me laugh at the people and what's constant or not. I mean, now I'm more exposed to the Chinese culture through my wife, and it's another like level of constant, but still, I mean, very different. But you can observe really some stuff are really constant in human culture / human psychology, behavior.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny when you see something that looks so different and you don't understand any or most of it. But when you see that some core things are still very constant, it's actually interesting to see. But, and this makes me bounce on like how, basically, what about Asia for BioLabs? Is it?
Yeah,
the plan in a few years?
I'm very interested in applying our model in
East Asia, I guess, in general.
So I have a Japanese wife.
Yeah.
And so I live between these cultures too. And we've traveled to Japan many times. And so I think Japan will benefit from our model greatly. We now have a very small BioLabs outside of Tokyo in Kawasaki. It's a suburb of Tokyo.
Okay.
Yeah, for about 12 months it's been open.
Okay.
It's a collaboration with a local academic institute called ICON-M. It's an institute for nanomedicine.
Yeah.
They have a beautiful building, which is just, if you ever fly to Tokyo, you may fly into Haneda Airport. So go by and take a look, meet with our team. It's just like you can see the airport from the building and vice versa. It's like literally across the river like this. And we have a small number of companies there.
Yes.
Japan is a great study case for what BioLabs can do because you have undoubtedly world-class science, right? And excellent basic research and result. I mean, they invented the iPSC technology that is now revolutionizing medicine, right? And yet you're doing that in a culture that is as traditionalist and as hierarchical as they get, right? And where you cannot take risk because if you fail, you're done. You will not recover. So it is, I think, even harder by orders of magnitude compared with Germany or France for a young scientist or to become an entrepreneur. There is a small and resilient community of entrepreneurs against all odds in Japan. I love these people, right? And we gather with them and they have their own internal gatherings. We are invited to meet them every now and then. It's like certainly less than 100 people build that community, but it's growing fast. And there's strong support now from the government, the Kishida government. They have understood this to be a problem and they have a good initiative. At least they have a good political desire to make progress. They have made available a program that's equivalent of $8 billion to support venture capital formation, to support startup, infrastructure building, and training programs. And I think those are all the right desires. Now the question is, how is it translated into programs and reality, and what's the time frame? I think in Japan, you will need a societal and cultural shift to allow for young people to take more risk, and then develop a risk tolerance that also says, and a tolerance of failure, where if you go out and you build your first startup, and of course it's gonna not be a great success, right? Like,
or 90% chance of failure.
Exactly. And it's okay. Why? Because it's sort of an experiment. A startup for me is like an experiment in business. Like, we do experiments in the lab all the time. If they fail, it's fine. We learn something.
Yeah.
But in startups, it's sort of an experiment in business. And you learn something, and hopefully you're successful the first time. Good for Mark Zuckerberg, right? But in many cases,
0.001%.
Exactly. So people shouldn't expect that, right? People should expect that, okay, you go try something, and in the path of trying, you're going to learn a lot of things. I like to invest in entrepreneurs who have failed once or twice because they've learned their lesson, right? But in Japan, that will be one of the biggest challenges for them to overcome, but they know it, to accept and even see as a learning the case of a failed company, so that they can build on that experience.
And it's interesting, looping or connecting it to what's universal or what's shared. Do you think that the higher tolerance to risk is a good thing across the board?
I think so.
Or is it your bias from a VC / biotech?
Of course, each of us is biased.
Because you have downsides.
You know, I was not a big fan of America before I came there. We went there not because of my choice. We went there because my wife had her postdoc, and I wasn't gonna be away from her for many years, right? So I followed her. And I wasn't a big US fan. In fact, I was one of these typical intellectual Europeans that hated on the US before. I now really respect the model, and I really like the model that the United States has built. Yeah. It's a very young country. It's not an old country like this.
Or almost younger than the building.
Correct, right? And so there are still things that America has to and will improve. Yeah. But certainly,
I'm wondering if it's like, if you can share it, because I mean, I think one thing that is what struck me as pretty difficult. I mean, obviously me also as entrepreneur going to Boston. I mean, I loved it, and I learned a lot from that, and I incorporated some part of this increased risk and different culture. But also one thing that is very tricky with the US culture with Boston is that you have to also understand the bigger context, and usually it connects in different levels, and it works because of the West. Versus if you take just risk of failure and you translate it, maybe it's different. But that's a bit where my question is coming. Like, is it more like a fundamental thing that can work universally, or is it depending on other societal?
So it's very interesting to think about where does this risk tolerance come from, right? I think America is built by immigrants, right? Because the native population has been wiped out in a way, right? So all of what America is built by people who most came from Europe, right? And they didn't have much to lose in Europe. That's why they left. The aristocrats didn't leave, right? The big industrials in the 1970s, 100s, they didn't leave. They had it good in Weimar and in Paris and in Lyon, right? They didn't leave. It's the people who had nothing to lose who left. And so those people, after they arrive, they had to build things with their hands. They had to stake their land, build their cabin, and hopefully they made it. Sometimes they failed, sometimes they were successful. But that, I think that's selected for a spirit of, okay, we have to try anyway. We have nothing to lose. We have to go forward. We cannot look back. We cannot rest. And it may be sort of glorifying the history of this, but I think that is still how the economic dynamism, as I call it, is preserved. They, of course, also in America, there's now layers of bureaucracy layered on top of this, and rules and regulations, etc. But I think the overall approach is a little bit different from where this is coming from, and I think that's why we see many immigrants in America still. There's proportionally way more businesses founded by recent immigrants from India, from Asia, from China, from other places, Pakistan. They found businesses. And why? Because maybe they don't have a job that is the right fit for them, and they don't have much to lose if they start a company, or if they start a little business of their own, right? And then some of them are successful and grow that. How is that? That is, I think, very specific in the US. So you cannot translate these things one-to-one. What I like to try to do when we open new sites is to see sort of what are the key learnings that BioLabs can bring to this community, and then look at what is the given ground in that place. What is the culture? What's the habit? What are the types of interaction that people have? And see, are there learnings that are specific to our industry that, because we have so much volume in the US, because we have so much data now of what works and what doesn't work, that we can bring to Europe, for example, here, right? And just accelerate that so that we don't need 10 years of trial and error, but that we can say, okay, these are the 5 things or 7 things that you have to do because they are known to work. Right. But of course, you have to build it in the greater context of what's here.
So, still going back to my question, at least from your learning, the higher risk tolerance is known to work. At least in your case, in biotech startups, I think it's something that helps entrepreneurs and in general, and can be helpful anywhere. I'm challenging you. I'm playing the
in venture. You have to have a risk tolerance. So of course we build companies that have no revenue. It's not like you have a product that's already there and you have to sell it in a different city, and you can predict how much you have to pay the salesperson to go to the different city and then sell more volume. No, you have a thing that may work or it may not work. And it's quite likely that it doesn't work, because otherwise someone would have invented that before. So you are trying to push the boundaries of what's possible. But you have to believe that if it does work, it'll be such a big paradigm shift or such a big market that it's worth taking the risk at the front end. And so all of what you do in venture or in startups of our type has to be built on a big tolerance of the likelihood of failure.
And I think, for the listeners who are not just enthusiasts or not like specific in biotech, what you just said also is, to appreciate how much risk there's. You talk always about software startups versus deep tech, but biotech in the category of deep tech is probably one of the highest risks possible. You cannot bootstrap really a biotech company, and
very hard,
especially on the therapeutic side. But
yeah.
No, that's great. On the switching a bit topic on the money / profitability, you touched base a bit on it, that real estate is a big business, especially probably is anywhere in the world, but I guess in the US there is also this biotech need a lot of lab space and we can make money there. And I think you told me something like that real estate is boring or not the most exciting, but it's very profitable. I will not quote it was not your exact words, but somewhere in there. But I think you make it also really exciting, at least as a space, because it can be very dry. It's like I rent square meters and I charge you the highest amount I can charge you, versus here it's really, really different. So can you touch base a bit there on how you see it, how how you look back on it after 10 years.
So we I said that, and I still believe it, that real estate is a really good way to make a lot of money if money is your sort of driver. Enlightened real estate can also change people's lives. You can build new areas of a city, you can redevelop buildings, and that's contributing a lot of value to society. Real estate, if you look at the large fortunes in America that are made today, a lot of it is done. Of course, there's the people that make a lot of money with tech, like you have Musk and Twitter and these guys. But a lot of large fortunes are made in real estate, and that's because you have the multiplier effect. If you have a big building, you know, the multiplier effect is very strong. And in most, certainly in America, but it's also true in Europe, that there are a lot of incentives from government that give you tax abatements, etc., to build real estate because you're building infrastructure. Now, I also say that it's a fairly simple business, and it's less tricky than science. Of course, there are layers of sophistication and specialization. I don't want to discount that, but it's a relatively small number of basic elements that drive real estate. I find it fascinating, the power to leverage capital and to build big projects is a fascinating thing I'm getting into and I'm learning about. I don't want to, though, become just a real estate person. I think the innovation part is much more fun, and it's more fascinating. It's where I'm home and where I come from. And so for us, we're bridging these two worlds of innovation and real estate, and we're building real estate to enable innovation, right? We have to get the balance right. It needs to pay for itself at least. It can't lose money. But this way, we are hoping to maximize our impact ourselves.
It's interesting. And because I mean, BioLabs has been profitable.
You have to build it
from the beginning. I mean, you have never raised money.
We have not raised money.
You still haven't closed the round.
We have not raised any external capital. Correct. It's very liberating to be a profitable company. So it's interesting because on the one hand, I'm a venture capitalist and I want to invest in your company or in an entrepreneur's company and buy the equity. But if I have a choice, I will not take other people's money if I don't have to, right? And if you're able, so a piece of public service announcement for any entrepreneur who's listening, if you don't have to take money, don't take money, right? If you're
take the least amount possible
to get you there. If you're able to build a profitable company on your own, that's a good way to do it, because then you have the decision making. Then you can pursue what you want to do, and sort of make sure that you have profits. Because as long as you have profits, you can rule your business and you can rule your life. As soon as you lose money, things look very different. And as soon as you're out of money, you have to shut the door. So it's a careful balance, right? And it's not a bad thing to take other partners into your business to provide capital, as long as you have a good arrangement with these providers of capital about like who does what, who has what level of control, what are you going to use the capital for? Are you using it to grow your revenues? Are you using it to conduct a piece of research and development which will lead you to an increase in valuation, a milestone? Are you looking to bring in capital that's smart capital? That's another big piece of like money is not the same, from like the same dollar is not worth the same. If you have an investor that brings in talent or connections or they can or other non-monetary value, that can be very important and instrumental for your company.
I like that. I like that. I mean, I'm with FLOT.BIO now really trying to bootstrapping it and making profit zone versus Biotech, where we raised money and we took us a long time to be profitable. I mean, even though it was on a small scale, not hundreds of millions, but the dynamism
is the same mechanics.
The mechanics is similar. I have to say. Yeah. It's
sometimes it's the same struggles. It may be easier to raise more money. And then so it's the same. I mean, the same mechanics work, right? As soon as you have external investors in your company, they'll want to say in where you take your company. That's only fair, right?
And it's like your marriage. Yeah,
absolutely.
For long term.
Absolutely.
You cannot kick out investors.
So it is important also for you, the entrepreneur, to look very closely at who are the potential investors in my company. Hopefully you have a choice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in many cases, our entrepreneurs have no choice.
Yeah.
They have to take the money from the first and only one that offers them. But if you do have a choice, use it and be very careful about like who do you allow to be on your board of directors? Who do you allow to have a blocking vote on your shareholder agreements? Like look into that. Don't just say, oh, I need the 5 million. I'll take it from anybody. Be very careful because it is like a marriage. It's a relationship. Every day you'll be having to run decisions by these people, and hopefully they will be supportive of your decisions. Hopefully they'll add value, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're driven by other interests.
Oh, it's misaligned. Yeah.
You have sometimes the time horizon for their investment doesn't align with your interests, right? And then you're in trouble. They make you sell the company even though you want to build it further.
I like what you say, and I can double on this. I mean, my experience was Biotech. I mean, but it was definitely a big focus on people on who we let in. But I like your point a lot on like what are your options at the moment, and even for us at Biotech, we did have that many options, but we did say no to a few investors where we just didn't feel like it, and in hindsight, it was the right decision.
Good.
And especially, I think it's especially tricky with at the beginnings. I mean, you see it probably in your ventures. I mean, at the beginning, everything works. The first 1-2 years,
honeymoon period.
Yeah,
it's not even 2 years. It's like 2 months.
Shorter in Boston. Everything is faster. But once you get to like challenging paths of like a bridge, down valuation, or then a forced exit, or even just to exit. I mean, for me, one big reason was once you have money on the table, people act very differently.
Yeah.
And it's the same people, but once, it's and that's where having selected the right people, and it's not right for everyone, it's also really a fit.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference at the end.
And relationships matter. That's where having been through this once or twice, relationships and experience do matter, right? I sound like an old person now, but it's helpful to have been through this once or twice, because now you're looking at the potential investor very differently, because you know what's going to happen during the time of the building of the business. You know what can happen during the exit of the business, and some of these events can be pretty nasty, right? And at the same time, it's hugely valuable to invest in relationships, to build trusted partners like that. And if you find that group, you could invest with them, or you could have them invest in your ideas in a serial fashion, and they come back for the next idea, whether you make the money or not. It's also as part of your if you're an entrepreneur and there's an investor that comes to look at your business, you should also do diligence on them, right? And you should try to find the other entrepreneurs that this guy invested in previously. Call them, find out what they have to say, especially with the ones that didn't work very well, right? Like, what happened? Did they change management? Did they fire the founder? How did they deal with adversity? How did they deal with trouble? And did they add value beyond the dollars? It's very important. And I see the mistake often by young teams, first-time teams, that they grab the first money that's on the table. And that's not always smart.
I guess no, that's a good point. But I think it comes a bit with experience. But at the same time, you have also trade-off on the experience where you were like, look for the perfect person and already know, but that sometimes you also need to. But it's the hard part of not too much and not too few.
Yeah.
Maybe on the that's great. On the one thing I want to talk also is about synergies, and one thing I like a lot was and you touched a bit on it, but with BioLabs, and that you are here really to help entrepreneurs, and you're helping them with space, but you're also helping them with capital, but also for you as an individual brings you your interest of helping on the real estate side, but also in investing in entrepreneurs, but also from a business point of view, it also allows you to, let's say, monetize, and monetize is probably not the right word, but you are exposed to opportunities through the labs, through the space, and this gives you access to people and opportunities. And if you can deploy capital there, you can also make bigger return.
Yeah.
So can you? I mean, that's already great. But can you talk a bit more there on, like, I don't know, on the synergies, on how you make it work? How did you get started? Was it obvious or not? I mean, like,
I'm happy to talk about it. There's not a master plan.
Yeah.
It's really observation. We started, so on the investment side.
And you have $500 million in the management around there.
Across five funds.
5 months, just to give context as well.
Yeah. So we have a venture capital firm that's called Mission BioCapital.
Yeah.
We are currently investing from Fund 5.
Yeah.
It is a $275 million vehicle that's mostly investing in the United States, mostly investing in companies and entrepreneurs that we connect with and meet through our lab network.
Yeah.
But it has made a few investments now in Europe. And we're growing our network in Europe as well. The investment, so the firm is founded by one of my mentors and myself and a few other people, Peter Parker. He was my first investor in our first company, Sequent. We mentioned it earlier. And so since then, we've been
amazing person.
We've been working together. You've met him, right? He's a very experienced venture capitalist. He had like 25, 30 years of experience in venture before we met. And he, when we built BioLabs and then when we built LabCentral, we saw many companies. And so he had that skill set of a VC with a very credible track record before. And so we went out and used that and raised our first fund together. And so we found that the platform that we have is very unique from other VCs. There's really no other VC firm that has this type of platform. And often VCs, they invest because they get a deck or they get an introduction and then they meet the entrepreneur and they look at a presentation. But we do that differently. We meet entrepreneurs typically when they apply for space to come into one of our labs. And so during the admissions process, every company has to pitch a selection committee, if it's in New York, if it's in Paris, if it's in Heidelberg or Durham. And myself, my partners, or some of our fund people will always sit on that selection committee alongside with a local team. And so we get a first view and impression of the team and the founders and their ideas and their ambitions. We ask them for key things like, what's the idea? What's the science? How are you going to make a business out of this piece of science? Who's on the team? What have they done before, and how will they execute this business plan? And have they raised any money from a third party, or is this just an idea stage thing? That gives us a very good first initial overview that allows us to assess the company for if they are a good fit for the labs. Also, will they be good stewards of our or citizens of our community? And then the bar is not that high to get into the labs, depending on the fill rate, really. In some cases, we have very low admission rate, like in Boston. We typically had 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 only accepted. And then in other places, admittedly, when the space is empty, we will be a little bit more lenient to fill the space up. But that's how we meet companies and entrepreneurs first. And then if they need money, if they're raising, now we already know them and we can have a discussion about it. We have no rights to invest. We get no preferred terms to invest. They don't ever have to talk to us on the venture side. We have a lot of companies and entrepreneurs that come with pre-formed venture syndicates from other places. And that's totally fine. They can come into the labs. But we will have a relationship with them that way. And so even though we are a relatively young firm, we've been able to build a strong network now of relationships and also syndicate colleagues. We've co-invested with the very best venture funds and venture funds that are 20, 30, 50 years old. And we've quickly been able to make a good reputation also on the venture capital side.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about finding opportunities in Europe now.
Yeah.
I think they will need a slightly different profile for us to invest in.
Yeah.
I think the science is really equally as good as what we find in Boston or Philadelphia. What is lacking in Europe, and that's true both in Germany and in France, those are the only two countries that we currently have a lab, is that the growth capital is lacking and that the management to take companies to the next step is lacking. Right? And so I think we can actually help with that. We can bring connections with experienced managers. Some of them are expats from Europe who want to come back and who sort of built a career in the United States, who can come back and apply this, and they'll be happy to move to Paris or to Munich or to Berlin
to work here for them.
And we can help with capital connections because we have our strong network. We can help take companies public in the United States if they want to. So that is a good opportunity that we will build more of that strategy going forward.
That's really, I like that on the synergies part, you are looking at the potential upsides, but you are not like you don't bring any constraint, as in like no strings attached or anything.
So to come into the labs, no.
Yeah, I mean, but you could. I mean, that's where some synergies also where you can rapidly have downsides. I mean, if BioLabs was very tied to Mission BioCapital, or was like, then maybe other VCs would look at it as more competition, or startups would not apply because then they could not get money from other VCs. So that you get it very like neutral, and it's only if they want to. That's actually
it's another way. Like they don't. I mean, beyond the selection committee, they wouldn't ever have to talk to me, right? We just here to offer support. Like if they want an introduction with the head of or with the chief scientist of Pfizer, I can introduce them because I know the guy who was here on my panel yesterday, right? And if they want an introduction with Novartis Venture Capital Fund, we can introduce them. If they want to talk to us about is this term sheet reasonable that they're getting from another venture fund, I'm going to be happy to give them advice, unbiased advice. Or if they need another syndicate member, we'll look at it.
The most unbiased possible.
Yeah, and we, for the most part, also we have on the platform today about 400 startups that use our lab today. Right? And we've only, out of the last fund, we've only invested in 20 of them. So it's a very, very small subset. So most of the time it won't be a good fit. It's maybe too much money or too little money. It's a technology we don't like, whatever. But so we are there as a resource. And I want to emphasize this again. Many venture capital funds have their companies in our network. I met the founder, or I knew him before, but I saw him yesterday of FLOT.BIO, French fund. They have like 7 companies already in BioLabs. Hotel, 7 companies out of like 15 or 16 companies. So they love this program, and Sofinnova has a few, and so we have one company here that we have equity invested in. So of course we are looking to bring on the best companies from anybody, and eventually we'll make an investment or two. But that's not a condition, and so that's another. I think some, you mentioned earlier, competitors to BioLabs. Some venture funds are embarking on this model where they build their own incubators, but then that's sort of the incubator to the companies that are in that VC fund, right? And we want to be the Switzerland, the open shop, right? Like you come to us because you need space. You come to us because you want to meet a cool community. That's also true on the pharma side. I don't know if you mentioned that, but we have a lot of pharmaceutical partners.
Pfizer was like just announced.
Pfizer is our founding sponsor. They joined recently, and we had their French CEO here yesterday, and Uwe Schönbeck, their CSO, and we're super grateful for Pfizer's support. Right, like their CEO Albert Bourla is the overall CEO. He made a big commitment to R&D in France for Pfizer, And I think this is already a demonstration of that commitment to France, is that they're helping to grow BioLabs in Paris. We also have as founding sponsors Ipsen, French company, and Sanofi. These are two companies that we had worked with very well already in the US. And then we also have Novo and Amgen and many other.
So each time with these pharma partners, there's no strings really attached for the residents.
It's only benefit attached for the residents.
Yeah. And they get what's in for them? They get exposure.
Yeah. So what's in it for them? Let's try to untie that. So one, the sponsors are sponsors because they pay money to BioLabs.
Yeah.
And that allows us to pay the rent and to pay this and to not charge the startups a huge price, right? The startups are paying a price that is subsidized by the revenue that we are able to create from the sponsorship. So it's a good deal, right?
Either the state or the pharma company.
Yeah, so it's being, in a way, it's being subsidized, right? Like if you get, and that's why we can be selective, right? Because what you get here is more value than you have to pay for, because other people are also paying for this, right? So and so that's a big part of the value that the pharma companies provide to the startups indirectly. Then there's also very direct benefit because they have office hours where they can come in and they can meet the head of development or the head of business development or other people who are scouts for technology and make their programs visible to the big pharmaceutical companies. There is a strong symbiotic relationship between the startup world and the big pharma nowadays. Most of the drugs that big pharma brings to market today are developed through collaboration, partnership, or acquisition of smaller companies, and they're not really internally developed or not internally invented, maybe then later developed if they take them over at phase 1 or phase 2. So the pharma companies have a big interest in connecting with this innovative community of people because they need to feed the beast in a way, right? They have stuff that's coming off patent and they need to fill the pipeline all the time. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship that we are in the middle of and we can help broker. Pharma companies, all of our pharma sponsors also have the ability to sponsor what we call golden tickets. So that's a sort of a ticket, an entry ticket to BioLabs that Pfizer can give out a golden ticket. And then they can give that to Philip, your startup, and you can come into BioLabs. You don't have to pay us, right? Because Pfizer will already have prepaid the year of residency for you. That's the golden ticket. And in that case, the Pfizer or Novo Nordisk or Amgen, they can run their own competition. They'll do it outside and they will select the company that they like most or that has the best fit with their strategy. And then that company can come into BioLabs for a full year of free lab space.
Which is equivalent to
50,000 is approximately. And so for the startup, this golden ticket process is very beneficial because 1, they get to pitch. 2, they get to put the name of the sponsor on their website. You know, these are typically very early stage companies. They would go to the business plan competitions. They would go to Hello Tomorrow. They go to Math Challenge and to Y Combinator. And for them, they're still collecting labels in a way and endorsements. This is a big endorsement. If you're getting a big pharma to give you a golden ticket, they only have 1 golden ticket per year to give out. So you win that. That's a big piece, a big sign of endorsement. And then, of course, it's up to the company to start up and the pharma sponsor if they want to make more of that. In some cases, we've had strong relationships developed during that year of golden ticket, and they ended up in licensing or collaborating or even M&A. In other cases, they give you the golden ticket and then there's no more contact. But that's really up to the entrepreneur and the sponsoring company.
Well, definitely. That's great. On the maybe on to finish on the more personal note or more personal development note, that we once when we met in Boston, you talked about business coach and you were saying it took you quite a while to get the business coach, and you recommended quite strongly to a lot of your portfolio companies, and it's pretty hard to convince them. And that's at the time when I was starting to work with a business coach as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, maybe a bit elaborate there, or did you change your mind since? So what's your view there?
I think it's
especially in the biotech, bit in the bio context. I mean, general entrepreneurship, but bio context.
I cannot really comment in the bio context, but I think it's probably true in every context, is that we all need feedback, right? You maybe get feedback from your spouse on your daily behavior, but they cannot probably give you a lot of feedback on your business things because they don't see it, and they
don't understand it.
maybe they're in a different world. They may or may not understand it. Yeah. And so in a way, a coach can be a therapist, a partner, a mentor, and a teacher of things, right? And I deal with a lot of employees or a lot of entrepreneurs who are not trained business people and who are not trained entrepreneurs. So they're very good at science. They're very good at a cancer pathway, or they're very good at engineering a certain electronic circuit, but they're not very good managers, or they're not very good salespeople of their pitch, or they're not very good understanders of their own self and how they come across to other people. And so that's where having a business coach that's on your side, that helps you think through issues and maybe even practice, is so valuable. So I've sent many of my promising employees, when they were scientists or engineers, to basic business training where they learn things, and this is even, you can take sort of a course, right? Like where you do things like how to talk with a difficult employee, how to have a difficult discussion with an employee, right? How to, like all of these many things that you need to learn to become a manager, because no one teaches that to a medical student. No one teaches that when you're taking a PhD in biology or chemistry.
BA part of, but not really, and it's not really
right.
practical.
So the one is the management and leadership piece, and then there's of course the sounding board for negotiation, how to set this up, and then there's always the piece of personal interaction. And, business is nothing else but also personal relationships. Now it's about money, but the personal relationships that people have with their clients, with their investors, with their employees, they're very real, and they form their behavior leading to either success or failure. In many cases, that's independent of the business case, right? Just because people start hating each other and not trusting each other, or maybe they're too trustful. All of that happens, right? And so that's where I have greatly benefited from I've had various people as coaches, formal coaches and informal, over the years. I've been part of groups of CEO roundtables, also a very helpful setup where you sit with, you meet once a month or so with other leaders of business that may be in very different industries. And then you find out that the challenges that you have are oftentimes very much the same, right? I was with a guy who had an electric business. Another guy was an air conditioning entrepreneur, big time. The other one had an ultrasound business or a healthcare consulting investment banker. We all face the same trouble, right? Like these employees that fit or they don't fit, the co-investors or the business partners where we butt heads with.
At least on the general business topics are very similar.
Yeah. But I can only recommend that. And we, in some cases, we know that entrepreneurs in our spaces have self-organized to form those groups. That's really awesome because then you don't, sometimes it's very expensive. You have to pay a moderator, but it's completely worth it. If you have the money in the company, it's completely worth investing in yourself, a little bit of that, by hiring a coach, paying for some of that, or joining one of these groups.
I mean, and we call it business coach, but it's not just for the business topics. It's a professional coach, but can be on any kind of topics. But I find it not in the biotech context. I find that quite a lot of coaching, of course, that can be on general topics, but also on the, let's say, day-to-day, it rapidly goes into also strategic / the management of employee has a bio or topical context. So I found it for him for my coach has a background in bio.
Okay.
And a background in tech, which is very rare to find both, entrepreneur and entrepreneurship. But it's definitely very helpful, even just to understand the product you're building. Even though he might not help you on the product, but it gives the feedback and think just more. So have you seen this, or what's like?
So none of my coaches had been entrepreneurs in my space directly, and so for me it was mostly always the discussion about sort of the business general and relationship and management things. But I've had these mentors that are expert repeat serial entrepreneurs or investors on my boards or as partners now in the venture capital fund. And so I think it's very useful for entrepreneurs to seek out these people that they can trust, right? And build a relationship. You don't go and say, will you be my mentor? But you build that trusted relationship and you get feedback and you check in with them on a somewhat regular basis. And that's very helpful. Yeah. And it's also important to pass that on, right? And I mean, you're doing that with your podcast here, right? Like you enable people to hear from other people's perspective, which is very useful, right?
That's great. And maybe what's the one thing you're working on at the moment for the personal development?
I try to be somewhat patient in the face of headwinds, and not freak out when the numbers don't look as good. So we are currently facing some headwinds in the United States. As you may know, the funding is tough for our startups. That translates immediately into worse year for us than previous years, right? Because our clients don't have money, so they can't have as much space with us. They can't order as many goods and things and services with us. So I see this as a challenge to also improve our business. It's always, I think, really in times of headwinds and even crisis that you see, is a business built well, solidly, or not. And it gives you opportunity to maybe trim some fat around the edges and concentrate on, are you building unit costs that are sustainable? And are you building a team and a culture that will also carry you through the tough times? It's very easy to build a company in up years, because if you build inefficiencies and you have growth, you won't even see them, right? Because the growth may be bigger than the inefficiency, but it's in the flat years or in the down years where this
comes the fundamentals in the
100%. 100%.
How do you work on your patients?
I don't know. I take walks. I work out. Those are the simple things.
I mean, it's because it's interesting. I mean, patience always like, you need to be more patient. But when it comes to the how to develop such a skill,
I think it's first of all, it's reflecting and not being too overly impulsive in your decision making. And so I know that you need to have a good balance with your physical situation. If
mind and body,
bad, totally right. Like if you feel bad because your back is painful or you haven't slept or like, then you aren't your full self and you're not going to perform very well. And maybe you make stupid decisions, right? I'm not perfect in that, but I try to at least stretch and work out in the morning or go for a run. And that's very helpful. I have much better days when I have a workout in the morning than when I rush to my first meeting because I didn't plan in for the time.
I think we could discuss longer.
I know you do a lot on that yourself, right?
Yeah, I experiment quite a lot. But for him, on patience is very interesting. First it's multifactorial, but really the how to work on it is tricky. And to know, patience also has the two sides usually, and any kind of quality has also upside down sides.
I'm not talking about complacency, right? Right.
It can be complacency. It can be make you slower decision making. So it's also and it conflicts with other values. So that's why I'm also curious on the how. But it sounds for you, patience is more also from a energy management overall, of being more balanced and taking
and
better
not
decisions.
and not freaking out in when bad news comes.
And
You have to deal with it. Take a step back and put it in perspective.
Yeah, nice. All right. Maybe to wrap through, if people want to learn more about you or follow you, I think you're quite active on Twitter.
Yeah, I used to love Twitter. Twitter is going path. I may need to look for a new platform, but it's so convenient.
You have Twitter and LinkedIn.
We have LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And that's it so far. I read that there's new platforms, and I need to learn about that
step by step. Yeah. No, great. Then people.
But I'm happy. So if any one of your listeners show up in Boston, or they're in Boston, they will always be welcome. They can say that they looked at our podcast.
Yeah.
They can come to LabCentral, any of our BioLabs locations. You can easily find me on LinkedIn and say that they want to connect, and we'll have a chat. Typically, I like to meet people in person first before I link with them.
Yeah.
But so I'm fairly accessible in Boston.
Yeah. So basically, reach out to Johannes. Great. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Philip.
Great conversation.
Great to chat with you as always.
Me again. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and thanks a lot for listening to the end. If you're keen, please hit the follow button somewhere maybe, or the like, review, share button, share it with some connections. It would help us a lot, especially this early in the show. And before telling you more what's behind the show, I want to say big kudos and thanks to the team. Kieran, web development, Catherine in marketing, Mary in logistics, Wayne in editing. They did an amazing job, and there's a lot of hard work put into the show. So now, what's behind? So FLOT.BIO, the company was founded in March 2022. I'm one of the founders, and previously I founded Biotech.eu. And we started the company building a marketplace for the biotech industry, but we didn't have enough product market fit. So we decided to pivot to a content business, with the first product being that podcast. We don't want to create, yet another podcast. There's already a lot of them around. But we believe Europe needs a high quality, long form podcast to help both professionals and biotech enthusiasts be better informed, grow, and just be better at what they're doing. And so that's why we are creating that podcast. We are selecting the best Europeans in biotech we can find, and we are interviewing mostly actually offline, so we can have really the highest quality, both technical aspect, but most importantly on the dance and the content and the flow of the internet content. We release around one episode per month on all the major platforms. Money-wise, we are financed by our own private investments, and our business model is based on advertisement. So it's the sponsored messages, slots that you see in each episode. And we are sponsored by financial support for individuals and corporate. So anyway, I will not make it longer. I hope you share our vision, and if you're keen to hear more, or you want to reach out, or you want to share some feedback, please shoot us an email, hi@FLOT.BIO. Again, thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode. Bye.